Hello, everyone. Jerry Shockey here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. I'm the Director of Youth and Education here. And again, just another part of our series of this video series of these short 15 to 20-minute video clips of the most popular programs that we have here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, whether we connect out to you through video conferencing, whether you come here as a field trip, the tens of thousands of students we connect with every year. We thought we'd take our 5 or 6 most popular programs and kind of boil them down into a 15, 20-minute teaching session that teachers you can utilize in your classroom, or if students are on break or snow days or any other reasons why they're home. You can send them as extra work to do, or parents, if you're watching this and catching this, is it extra work and extra things you want to use the game of football to help spark interest in different curricular areas. And so today, what we're going to talk about is African-American Trailblazers in pro football. So what I'm going to do is we're going to be locked on our screen for a little bit. I'm going to share a screen here, and you're going to see. First of all, let me just show you guys, for those that could be tuning in from all over the country or possibly all over the world, where exactly the Pro Football Hall of Fame is. And you can see we are in Northeast Ohio and in the city of Canton. And I can zoom in here now on the Pro Football Hall of Fame so you guys can see our building. And then right next to us, what you see is Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. And this is where the Hall of Fame game was played each year. It's the first preseason game of the NFL season. This year, the Dallas Cowboys will be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in that game. And so there's our facility there. Now, what we're going to talk about today is obviously African-American Trailblazers. And so just for sake of time, typically when we have a program, we do a full program, 50 to 60-minute interaction with students, whether here at the Hall of Fame or whether through video conferencing, we would go through a lot of the different things that football teaches about life. We have a great video that we would show for that you can see there. But today I'm just going to touch on lightly the intro, which is our mission here at the Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, preserve its history, promote its values, and celebrate excellence everywhere. Our vision, it's not just the past, it's the future. It's not just about Canton, it's the world. It's not just a great museum for football, but it's a message of excellence everywhere. And then our values, and we can talk with students about all kinds of different values, come up with 50, 60, 70, 80 different values, but we boil these down to these 5. And our values here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, what we believe the game stands for and what we stand for is commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence. And so we'll skip over some of these extra slides that we have here. But today we're going to talk about African-American Trailblazers. So the way we're going to cue this up is actually just by playing this video to introduce it.
1963 is not an end, but a beginning.
America is the land of opportunity. Let's not slam the door on those who may look or sound different from us.
We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead.
I'm being inducted into the Hall of Fame because my athletic ability created an opportunity for me to excel in the sport I love. When we open the door for others to compete, we fulfill the promise of one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
My great-great-great-grandfather had no choice. We have one. I pray we dedicate ourselves to be the best team we can be, working and living together, representing the highest ideals of mankind, leading the way for all nations to follow.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Okay, all right. So I want to stop sharing here for just a second. Then we're going to go back to the Prezi here for the remainder of the program and maybe to the tail end where I'll close things out. But obviously, the first person you saw in there that everyone knows is obviously Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, the second person you might not recognize was a guy by the name of LaDainian Tomlinson, who a few years ago, when he was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and in front of thousands of fans and in front of a national audience on TV broadcast on an ESPN and NFL network, he used that platform to use the game of football to promote equality and unifying a country. And so in a very Martin Luther Kingish way that he delivered that. And so what we're going to talk about here today, and we're going to do it very quickly. It's just a high-level glance over of the history of football and the integration of the game. But what I want you to recognize are a couple things. We're going to talk about two terms. So depending on what age group's tuning in here today, some of you might know the difference, some of you might not. We're going to look at integration and segregation. You know, segregate means to separate, integrate means to bring together. And you're going to see where the NFL integrated, then it's segregated, then it integrated, what we refer to as the permanent reintegration, or the permanent integration, or the reintegration of the National Football League in 1946. And so we'll look at those two terms. But then what I want to just focus on for just a second, that'll set up what we're trying to convey here today, is that sport in general just played a huge part in integrating our country, because especially in the early 20s, 30s, and 40s, you know, you start talking about baseball. Everybody knows the story of Jackie Robinson in 1947, and rightfully so, Major League Baseball being the most popular sport at that time. Football was gaining more popular in the 50s. It didn't become the most popular sport according to a Harris poll in 1965. It took over baseball as the most popular sport. But, you know, guys like Jackie Robinson or Jesse Owens or Bill Russell or Jim Brown in football, you know, these guys took a stand. And football, what football did was really, we refer to it as the great equalizer. And what I mean by that is that, you know, when you see Patrick Mahomes taking a snap from a center, he is not concerned about what color his offensive lineman is. He's concerned about, is he the best for the job, and how are they going to win? And so sport is an equalizer because of the desire to win. And the desire to win trumps any other, you know, differences that might be between, you know, maybe faith background or color of skin or other things that people do. It's like, all right, are you the best person for this job that we have? And if you are, I don't care what other things are, you know, we're going to work together. And so football is just this great equalizer. But football also helped, you know, it got into people's living rooms, if you will. Especially in heavy segregated towns and states, you know, especially in the South, when you talk about Louisiana and South Carolina and Georgia and these different states that were still heavily segregated. And so football, and many times where, you know, a community might be completely segregated, where as a white person, you might not even encounter an African-American very often because, you know, you went to different schools, went to different churches, ate at different restaurants, shopped at different supermarkets, completely separated facilities. And so you may just be living on what you've heard your parents and grandparents and maybe teachers and other people told you about a certain group. And obviously it wasn't positive. And so you might have had these negative connotations or these stereotypes of African Americans, but all of a sudden you're sitting in your house and you flip on the TV, and all of a sudden you watch a sport, and the things that you're being taught by people around you seem to be completely different than what you're witnessing on TV. Because you see whites and blacks, you know, celebrating together, high-fiving together, working together, celebrating together, rejoicing together, crying together. You know, sport is just this amazing thing that was very visible, and it still continues to be very visible. And when it talks about social issues in our country, that sport can be a very powerful way to lead the way, if you will, for these social issues. And so that's why I kind of want to set up here. And we're going to just go through this very quickly, and then I'm going to close with a video at the end. And so let me go and share screen again here. And we're going to go back into that Prezi. There we go. All right. So if we look at the first, now football actually broke its color barrier all the way in 1904 with the guy by the name of Charles Follis. And you can see him here. He played for the Worcester Athletic Club back in 1904. And again, it's going to be, we go into a lot more depth into this with other programs, but we're just going to kind of breeze over this. But 1904 was the first. But what's really interesting about this story is that already there's a connection between the Brooklyn Dodgers in Major League and professional football. And so pro football came around back in as early as 1892, the first person that we have documented evidence being paid to play. So from 1892 to 1919, we refer to those as pre-NFL years. The NFL did not start until 1920. So Charles Follis and others were the first African Americans to play pro football. Now, there's a difference between obviously pro football and then the actual league that was formed in 1920, and we make that distinction, and you'll see that here in just a minute. But pro football, very interesting. There's a Dodger connection just in football in general, is that Charles Follis was actually teammates with Branch Rickey. Now, Branch Rickey was the one that was responsible for bringing Jackie Robinson up in Major League Baseball with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And so most historians believe, because of his early encounters, kind of paved the way for Branch Rickey to bring Jackie Robinson up. And you'll see other parallels between these two stories. Now we jump into the NFL, starting in 1920 here in Canton, Ohio. One of the reasons why the Pro Football Hall of Fame is in Canton. You had the first two African-Americans to play, Frederick Fritz Pollard and Robert Rube Marshall. Now from 1920 to 1933, there were 13 African-Americans that played over those 14 seasons. And so, but in 1934, there was something called the color line that was drawn in sports and in football. So there was a Great Depression that started off in 1929. There weren't many jobs. Unemployment rate was high. Who were the first people overlooked? Minorities. And so in football did the same thing. They drew a color line, and it wasn't until 1946 that African Americans would be back in pro football. And then 1946, the All-American Football Conference with the Cleveland Browns and the LA Rams of the National Football League both signed two African Americans. The Browns signed Hall of Famer Bill Willis, who went on to this amazing career under the legendary coach Paul Brown, who the Browns are named after, as well as Marion Motley, another Hall of Fame fullback. And so, and then the LA Rams signed Woody Strode and Kenny Washington. And there's all kinds of neat stories behind that, but again, for the sake of time, we won't go into those here today. But one of the cool stories about that is this, is that the Dodger Connection 2.0 now. We talked about Charles Follis and Branch Rickey. Well, now you see here is that here's a picture of Woody Strode, Jackie Robinson, and Kenny Washington. They were all teammates at UCLA. And then actually, to take that a step further, Robinson and Washington were even roommates. So here's two roommates at UCLA that were going to go on to break the color barrier permanently in their respective sports. Now, what you had is, as more and more African Americans were starting to play, the last team in the NFL to integrate was actually the Washington Redskins, and they brought over a guy by the name of Bobby Mitchell. In 1962, he was traded. If you can imagine the pressure that an African American faced at that time, not only playing for his you know, to support a living, you know, and to support a family and things like that, but also these African Americans were charged, and many times from predominantly black schools, what we refer to as historically black colleges, universities. You hear the coaches say, you have to make it, because if you don't make it, or if you don't do well, it might be another 5 or 10 years before another African American plays. So not only were you playing for your family and for your living, but African Americans at that time were playing for the race. If you can imagine that kind of pressure that was on guys like Bobby Mitchell. But Bobby Mitchell opened the door for guys like Kellen Winslow and Paul Warfield, Michael Irvin, Chris Carter, Charlie Joyner. Again, more and more African Americans. The Chiefs were the first roster to have over half their roster be African Americans. But even that, there were still limitations that were placed upon African Americans at that time. Middle linebacker was one. It was not more and more African Americans could play, but they couldn't play the so-called field general for defense, the smart position, the leadership position. And Willie Lanier, Willie's a good friend of mine and good friend of the Hall of Fame, he's one of those people that make smart people look dumb. Because Willie is such a cerebral man, an amazing business owner, and involved in so many things. But took that genius that he has and applied that to football, just the angles and pursuits and gaps, and really kind of just obliterated the fact that people thought that an African American couldn't play middle linebacker. And then that opened the doors for other linebackers like Lawrence Taylor, Derek Thomas, and Mike Singletary. Let's move on to, obviously, quarterback position was a position that people thought African Americans couldn't play. Marlon Briscoe came in and broke that barrier. James Shaq Harris, Randall Cunningham, Warren Moon, who went on to a Hall of Fame career, Doug Williams, who obviously put the nail in the coffin, because even though there are more and more African Americans playing quarterback, people said, well, you know, they can play middle linebacker now, they can play quarterback, but they can't lead a team to a championship. They're not smart enough to lead a team to a championship. And Doug Williams put the nail in the coffin, so to speak, when he won the Super Bowl. Not only became the first African American to start, first African American quarterback to start in a Super Bowl, but to win the Super Bowl and then go on to win Super Bowl MVP. As that progressed, obviously head coaching wasn't until 1989 that the first modern era head coach, and Art Shell, came along. So there's still barriers that were put in place. And he opened the door for guys like Dennis Green, Lovie Smith, and Tony Dungy. And again, this is just a high-level, quick overview, but obviously you see the players and coaches of today, of yesterday, open up the doors for coaches today, like Mike Tomlin, Anthony Lynn, Brian Flores. Players of yesterday opened the door for you guys, who you guys are familiar with, guys like Michael Thomas, Russell Wilson, Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett, Saquon Barkley, Larry Fitzgerald, Khalil Mack. And so all these coaches and athletes had great careers. Football isn't everything, though. And I want to close things out with this, with Derek Brooks, a story about what he encountered when he was in high school.
For me, it was a battle of education. It wasn't about putting my fist up, going to fight when my friends called me a nerd. It was just simply beating them cerebrally. When people used to say that, hey, dumb jock, I hate that term. And it saddened me to see people say these things about athletes. That was my motivation. And it was all fighting against a story that I read about an NFL player that couldn't read. And I was in high school, and I walked into a teacher's class. And typical me, I'm comfortable being the only minority in a class full of whites and honors classes. And she asked me, was I lost? No, I'm not lost. This is the room. And I showed her my schedule, and she said, okay, you sure you're supposed to be in here? I said, yes, ma'am, I am. And she said, okay, you're going to sit right in front of me. And I said, well, is this open seating? And she said, yes, but my seating chart, you're going to sit in front of me. And I took that as a jar. I'm going to sit in front of you. I say, but I want to tell you this. I'm going to be the smartest person in your classroom. I say, I'm not going to cheat. I say, by the end of the year, people are going to be cheating off me. I say, I'm not intimidated by this. I've been fighting this my whole life. And she said, what is that? I say, the only minority in a class full of whites, I said, and I play football. I said, you're going to either like me or you're going to hate me because you're going to see me every single day. And she's become one of my better friends throughout the years, and she tells the same story about how she caught kids cheating off me. I did not let it infuriate me. If anything, it motivated me to be the best student athlete I possibly can. And that has really transcended into what I do today in terms of motivating youth and my involvement with education.
Okay, all right, so we're going to stop share here and just close things out. Now, in that video you heard, Derek Brooks walks into a classroom. The teacher says, are you lost? And if you can imagine his reaction, like, really? And then she goes into that she's going to put him up front and pretty much humiliate him, and as you heard in that video, is that, she didn't know anything else about him. She judged him based upon the color of his skin and the sport he played. And so it wasn't like she was like, well, Mr. Thompson last semester said you got 9 detentions. So because of that, based upon that, I'm going to put you up front next to me because I want to make sure I can keep a close eye on you. There was none of that. And Derek Brooks identified that and saw that. And so it's just a lesson for us, is for number one, for us to realize is that if we're all honest with each other, we've all done that. Now, it might not be based on race, but it could be based on some other difference, based on gender, based on socioeconomic status, based on how someone looks. Maybe they're too tall, maybe they're too short, maybe they're bigger, maybe they're smaller. Whatever it is, we have a tendency as people to put people in boxes based on external appearances. And so instead of judging the hearts of people, we judge the appearance of people. And if we're honest, we have to be honest with ourselves and say, we've all done that. I've been guilty of that. For me personally, it's based on a judgment of sometimes just a look of a person. The best way I can describe it, it's not based on color or gender or anything else. It's just whether they look grumpy or not. I guess that's the best way to describe it. And I found that I was bypassing people on certain things. Like I go out and talk to people at Walmart. That's how I am. I'll say hello and talk and see how their day is going. And I found myself bypassing people that maybe looked kind of that way. And I had to really challenge myself and take that thought captive and say, okay, that's my thought. It's one thing to have a thought. It's another thing to act upon that thought. We can have the thought. We just need to take that thought captive and not act upon it. Unfortunately, that teacher had the thought and then spoke it out and then acted upon it. And so what I want you to notice, though, is what Derek's response was to it. It wasn't fighting. It wasn't to cuss her out. It wasn't to do all these things. It was like, you know what? I'm just going to prove you wrong. And so what happened at the end of that story? It's what's amazing. What happened between Derek and that teacher? They became friends. You heard, very good friends. And so the way Derek responded changed her. And so that's a lesson we can learn, is that how we respond to adversity, whether we're talking about today, we're talking about African-American Trailblazers, how African-Americans responded to the racism, the blatant racism that they faced yesterday and still currently today, that people still face based upon differences today, is how do we choose to respond? And I love what Dr. King says, is that, darkness can't drive out darkness, or hatred can't drive out hatred, only love and light can. And so our response is one that can change people. Is it a response of love? Is it a response of shining light on the people? Is it a response of not wanting to fight and things like that, but wanting to respond even in the face of some cruel things that could be said to us or done towards us? Can we still turn a cheek and go on about and give a gentle response to people? And so I think that's the beautiful thing, because it changed that lady. His response changed that woman's perspective, because she said, uh-oh, I was completely wrong. And now they're close friends. And so that's the program here today. Appreciate you guys. Just in a nutshell, that program. Please, at any time, if you guys want to do programs, field trips, video conferences, or have questions, you can email us at education@profootballhof.com. Take care and God bless.